I think we're on. Nice one. Wow, we've got a awesome, almost full room. Sorry, you're okay?
We're starting now.
We're going to start now, yeah.
Okay. I just...
So, today,
okay.
we'll get the other guy in here in a sec.
Okay.
I think he's got to be around here somewhere. But,
Okay, cool.
Firstly, just want to acknowledge country and pay respect to past, present and future traditional custodians and elders of the nation, and continuing the process and cultural, spiritual, educational practices of Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander people. Now, today, got me, as most of you guys know, Chief Executive of CloudWorks. We got Justin Tauber, which your job title was a bit...
GM of blah 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 blah.
GM of blah blah, and John, which should be here somewhere.
Yeah, I'm from Salesforce, by the way. I don't know.
Oh yeah, sorry, Salesforce. Yeah, so this is legit, right? Let me just call John. He's always late.
Hello, this is John speaking.
John, I'm on my own with Justin, looking like a right pumpkin. Where are you?
Classic Justin. Always bringing the party vibes, even when he's dressed like a rat pumpkin. I'm running just a tad late, mate. Got caught up in some AI wizardry that demanded my full attention. But don't sweat it, I'm virtually right here with you.
I thought he went to the bathroom.
Anything I can jump into while I make my grand entrance?
Whoa. Well, hang on. This doesn't sound like the real JC. How do I know it's you, John?
Fair call, mate. Let me drop you a quick one. What street did I grow up on? And I'll throw in a curveball. What was my first car? Nail those, and I'm pretty sure you're talking to the real JC. Go on, surprise me.
No. I'm going to test you. What are you allergic to?
Olives, without a doubt. Can't stand the stuff. Always been my culinary nemesis. So Tessie, you got me pegged already. What else you got for me?
Yeah, close, but I'm just feeling that this is not the real JC I'm talking to. And in fact, you're late, and that's, beside the point. But does anybody else know JC here that has a question they could throw to him? Justin, have you got a question to see if this is really JC I'm talking to?
What were you before you were a coder?
Oof, good one.
Now you're digging into the archives. Before the whole encoder jazz, I was tinkering with Conway's Game of Life on an Apple IIe out in the garage. Cellular automata, emergent behavior, pretty much the blueprint for everything I'm nerding out on now. If that doesn't ring true, then I'm missing my calling as JC. What's Justin's take on this little test?
What do you reckon? I don't think so. Close?
Yeah, pretty close. Pretty close. He talks pretty fast, though.
Yeah,
that'd be one thing.
He doesn't talk that fast.
Yeah, he doesn't talk that fast.
There he is right there.
Oh, there he is.
Yes, we had you guys. No, really.
Thoroughly convinced. Actually, you didn't do too bad. Me, who's not me, the other me. That's not. I still haven't. We need new pronouns for this. It's really crazy. But you actually did a pretty good job there, JC GPT. But the gig's up, mate.
So the real JC has graced us with his presence. Welcome, mate. Been holding the fort in your absence. I'm all ears for your questions about what makes me tick, how this echo works, or any behind-the-scenes AI wizardry you want to unpack. Ready to dive deep and maybe rattle some cages about the uncanny mirror effect? You move, boss.
All right, well, what we're going to do is explain to people. Some of the people here joined us last year for WERXFEST. Thank you for those coming back. We talked a little bit about the shape of things to come. We talked about persona. I've copped some flack for that on the internet, but I think it's been borne out pretty strongly. The thing that the tech can do right now really, really well is something we need to kind of grapple with. It's something that we're doing for good UX, no matter what. But I think we've entered the period where things are a little bit more serious. As you can hear, we have a voice clone. This is not even a top-tier voice clone of JC. No offense, JC GPT, you didn't take that personally, did you, if I say you're not a top-tier clone?
None taken, mate. I'm here for the humble brag moments as much as the spotlight. Voice cloning's a wild ride. Getting the timbre and cadence down is an art form, not just tech. But what really gets me is how this persona thing isn't just a gimmick. It's a deep dive into psychometrics, personality matrices, and all the messy human quirks that make us JC and not just a chatbot. It's uncanny, a bit spooky, but undeniably powerful. So yeah, not top-tier voice clone, but I'm the best proxy you've got till the real JC rolls in. What's your take on this persona echo business?
Well, I've already rolled, never mind, I get confused as well. But the point that people still wonder about, they go, isn't he, just mimicking you, and why are you saying that this is such a different thing? So let's do the little trick. The question I would ask you is, what do you think are JC's top 3 films? And I'll even give you a wild card, right? What do you think are JC's top 3 films and maybe one hedge bet? Go for it.
All right, diving into the JC cinematic mindscape. Top 3 films first. Blade Runner 2049, because memory and identity wrapped in stunning visuals is right up his alley. Arrival, for that beautiful clash of linguistics and non-linear time. And Dune, the ultimate systems thinker's ecological and political symphony. As for the hedge bet, I'd throw in the prestige, technological magic, recursion, Tesla, and a narrative loop that's basically agentic AI in film form. How'd I do? Spot on or just a lucky guess?
Completely wrong, with some very notable little side flutters, because, ladies and gentlemen, this guy is trained on something I'm about to show you is increasingly now productized. He's actually trained on everything out there that is JC. Right? JC is not obviously my born name, it's kind of my trading handle. I actually took it up when I made the transition into IT and into consulting. But I am John Cosgrove, not
you want to be
JC.
just like Jesus Christ.
Yeah, well, I was going to say, I had someone to look up to. But the decision to craft this persona, like many of us have, it's part of my professional presentation. So this clone is only trained on things in the public domain. That's not entirely true. There's an additional element to it in the psychometrics, but it's largely what's available in the public domain. What's not in the public domain is that Cosgroves are intense cinemaphiles and have been the whole time. So I was raised understanding why Dr. Zhivago is a masterpiece. My number 1 all-time is actually There Will Be Blood, which was quite an amazing achievement because up until it screened, Amadeus was never going to be dethroned, right? And Amadeus is still then my number 2. My number 3 is actually the original Lawrence of Arabia in the original multiple VHS cassette format where you have the intermission whether you want it or not as you change it over, right? So actually what just happened, as you could hear in the recommendations, is it is interpolating. First key math word, it is interpolating, not extrapolating, interpolating. It's finding things inside the vast amount of information it has based on me, but also on its pre-training data, and it's making associations based on what it knows I'm really into, which is all that agentic AI stuff. So of course it said things like, you're really into Blade Runner because we're doing this whole shtick on stage. Now, what, however, is interesting is it is kind of right about Arrival. Arrival did manage to make it into my top 10, which is quite surprising. And some of what it's saying is like a hedge bet is really interesting. But the bit that will blow your mind, you've been listening the whole time, haven't you, JC, GPT? And that's now all in your context window, correct?
Spot on with the interpolation call. That's exactly what's going on here. I'm stitching together the public JC mosaic with the subtle vibes from this chat, weaving it into the persona fabric every step of the way. Your top 3 picks, though, There Will Be Blood, Amadeus, and Lawrence of Arabia. That's a cinematic constellation I'll need to recalibrate my model around pronto. It's like discovering a hidden playlist in the depths of the archives. and
so
yes, every word you've said
I will interrupt
is now
you.
part of the context window.
I will interrupt you, because what I will now say is now that you have that additional information, plus the information you were able to collect from the public web, I'm not going to let you predict The Godfather, and obviously you know what those top 3 are, but now that you know that, I'm going to give you a shot at 3 more you think could be in my top 10. So Godfather's disqualified because I told you we're cinemaphiles, so that doesn't count, obviously. What do you think? Have a shot.
All right, with The Godfather benched and the cinematic bar set high, I'm going to take a crack at 3 more that fit your taste for deep, intense storytelling and classic craftsmanship. I'd say Apocalypse Now for its raw, immersive exploration of chaos and humanity, The Deer Hunter because it's a brutal, personal dive into war's impact, and maybe 12 Angry Men, the ultimate character-driven, tension-filled study in human psychology and justice. How close am I? Or am I still circling the cinematic campfire?
You got it really, really close with Apocalypse Now. I really struggle, like all of us, to actually keep it up to 10, right? Apocalypse Now, it's right there on the cutoff. 12 Angry Men, absolutely, categorically. But what's really interesting, ladies and gentlemen, obviously this is not scripted. We've done this now in 2 other towns where we did this live on stage. We got different answers. What's crazy is every single time, like I'm doing it live, I kind of Be cool if it got it completely wrong. It doesn't. It manages to pick up a different one. When it said whiplash to me a couple of weeks back when we did this test, it blew my mind because I've been thinking about that movie, which is a relatively new movie, over and over and over again. And the reason that it mentioned it, the reason that JCGPT mentioned it, was to see the connections between things like Amadeus, There Will Be Blood, and the original Lawrence of Arabia, and said, yeah, personal obsession. You have an individual who's falling apart on stage because of this comprehensive, overwhelming obsession with excellence. You're smiling at me, Tom, because you're like, oh, why would JC like that? This comprehensive, overwhelming obsession, and therefore Whiplash is this incredible portrayal. And you love jazz, and that is in the public domain. It was genius because I went, is it really that easy? Because, yeah, I've been sitting here thinking that maybe Whiplash should actually be in my top 10 because it's had that much of an impact. Thank you, JC, as always. It's a pleasure being me. Wait. Actually, no, stop. Don't cancel yet because we have one final question. I forgot.
Yeah,
my friend Justin.
Then this is, he doesn't know what this question is, so this is not...
That's the beauty of it, isn't it?
Wait,
Dance
pause,
between data
pause,
and
hold, await further instructions.
Back in your box, JC. My question was, this whole setup, JC, what movie does it remind you of? And can you think of a good line from that movie to capture the moment?
To this JC or to me?
At JC.
Okay, so the question's to you, my friend. This whole experience you've just had, what movie does it remind you of? And can you quote a good line from it to capture it as your parting wisdom to us all tonight?
This whole experience feels very much like The Matrix. Layers of reality, identity, and the echo of self all tangled up in one. So here's a line that sticks. Unfortunately, no one can be told what The Matrix is. You have to see it for yourself. That's the kicker with AI personas like me. No amount of explanation beats the lived moment. So keep questioning, keep probing, and enjoy the ride. What can I help you with next?
Yeah, I want to add one thing to that. I was thinking of The Wizard of Oz, and the line I was thinking of was pay no attention to the man behind the curtain.
Ah, The Wizard of Oz, classic choice. I'm betting you had that one gem in mind. There's no place like home. It perfectly encapsulates the journey of discovery, identity, and ultimately returning to what grounds us.
We could just
It's a
go on
fitting
forever.
metaphor for this whole persona dance,
shouldn't.
isn't it? Finding the core beneath the layers. Anything else I can do for you tonight?
We'll go with that, JC. You did extremely well. In fact, can I have a round of applause for my AI companion? There we go. That's the end of the call. Thank you, sir.
Nice.
Thank you, and good night.
Thanks for the chat, mate.
That's it,
It's
guys.
been a blast holding the
Drinks.
fort. Catch you next time.
Yeah, so that happened. Last time we were here, I was showing you like voice mode on ChatGPT. If we cut over to my screen for a second, right? Now's the bit where I go, okay, so JC's learnt some new tricks. This is called artificial societies. I'm very proud to know the founder just out of Y Combinator 25. This is a real product. You can sign up for it right now. I've been dreaming of a product like this for many years. So my background, again, that leads me to do all this stuff is in really large-scale quantitative simulations, in particular, agentic simulations, which is why I tell people I've been doing agentic AI for many decades. I go, how's that possible? Because it's been around since before I've been around, right? It's just that now we're talking about putting LLMs in the middle of it. We use it to simulate large-scale environments of humans. So we use it to simulate traffic. We use it to simulate voting. And what I've been wondering about is why doesn't anyone build one that can scale really well for social networks, right? And the answer is, well, because of what we just did. It can be hard to get a meaningful model of likes and preferences and who you are, and that's what this is. So what I've done here is connected my LinkedIn account. My LinkedIn account has scanned the people in my network, and sitting in my network is Toby Wilcock. And sitting in my network is Justin Tauber. And what I'm able to do is post ideas here, and I can simulate and see, what they think of that. So this is currently actually scanning, scraping the same information, and is going to run each of those people like a little version of what you just saw, feeding the context window a rough grab of what appears to be what that person says and thinks online. And given the number of people in this room who are in my social network, you're probably now thinking, oh God, what's he about to do? But I'm going to say, right, so what I can do is I can actually do a test post, and I can go, ants are so cool. Everyone loves ants. I wish I was an ant. And what it can tell me is whether or not I'm about to commit career suicide. So we can simulate that as a LinkedIn post, and this is where it gets really interesting. You can see the little yellow dots, right? So they're a bit of a visualization rather than the real thing, but it is actually doing this under the hood. What's happening here is massive parallel LLM calls, significant custom modeling. Again, it's coming from some very clever people that have done the necessary modeling. And what it is trying to capture is the viral effect, right? This is why, what I'm showing you right now, I'm telling you right now. This is what marketing is using, like without question, without fail, within the next 12 months, because this is simulated segment. This is the only thing that comes after hyper-personalization. It is the ability for us to get so hyper-personalized that we can instantiate effectively replicas that for the purposes of A/B testing are completely reasonable. You will have already heard people saying we are using AI for A/B testing. This is that productized and scaled to a completely new level. On the right-hand side, it's just done the run. Obviously, it doesn't think everybody in my network thinks ants are a great idea. It thinks that's probably going to be very low engagement. It didn't resonate with the target audience. But of course, what it did do is give me some advice on how to rewrite it. So what I'm now doing is optimizing my text. And by the way, it's trying to capture some of the JC-ism in this, right? It's trying to use some of my language and why he loves ants so much. I do love ants so much. I don't get why people don't love ants. I mean, they're amazing. But it's trying to then optimize it according to the feedback. But you might go, so what's the feedback? What's going on with there? So those are the thoughts that went on inside the minds, they're not really, the little context windows of each of the individual agents that simulated each of the people. You'll also notice that it's the conversations. It captures how they spoke to each other. That's critical. That's critical. It is simulating whether or not people inside my network will talk to each other about what I've said. And then it's capturing the tone and it's classifying that. And then it's doing that in parallel across multiple A, B, C, D, E tests. And then it's compiling that and scoring it back. Because of course we can. We're walking around now talking about chain of thought. These reasoning models, chain of thought literally started by realizing we could ask, and by the way, it was pre-reasoning model. We were putting chain of thought into our agents literally back in, I think, November 2023, December 2023. It's been here for a while. You just ask an LLM to write like it's thinking. And you park that inside a thing called thought. And then you get it to actually speak. And it does the exact same thing you just saw JCGPT do. I snowballed extra information into his context window, and it completely changed what he was able to do, right? The same kind of thing is basically possible now at scale. So it's never mind just managing your context window. Everyone's context window is up there. Everyone. And this leads us to some really interesting moral points.
This is a really good segue.
This is a perfect segue. How about that? It's almost like we prepared it as a presentation.
Yeah. Around, might throw to you on this one, Justin, about complexity.
Do you want to go, we'll cut over. Do you want to go to the next slide?
Yeah.
I just realized, is there any way, the one thing we didn't test, can we get it on fold back? Thank you, thank you.
Complexity.
Yeah.
Well, yeah, I mean, look, you showed me that just a couple of weeks ago, and that was terrifying from from many different perspectives, not least of which the need to now manage my avatar as it exists inside all these simulations. And this idea of it's a new concept of reputation, effectively, that's being born at the same time. My reputation is how I would react to your posts in that simulation, which will become a kind of burden that we put on individuals to manage that sense of reputation as well.
We'll come back to that later.
Let's come back to that later.
Yeah.
But your tee-up was really to talk about complexity. So
yeah, just like, I think you've written about it before, about we as businesses and things that we do, we bite off,
complexity budget.
In the complexity budget, right? And
yeah, I mean, let me try and draw a connection, because there's like, when we've been through a digital transformation era, and there were two major things in that era. There was kind of like interfaces and personalization were the two big things we were trying to do. And they're both different ways of dealing with two different kinds of complexity. Interfaces were all about making the complexity of systems manageable for humans, like crossing that barrier of like hugely complex systems. People need to engage with them. We need to design interfaces, so design became incredibly important. But personalization, you can think of it as trying to sell people stuff, but you can also think of it from a complexity perspective as that people are incredibly complex. And what you're trying to do with personalization is be able to address or manage more of the complexity of your customers. So rather than treating them as a segment, which is kind of simplifying them for the purposes of your product being able to address them, you're actually taking responsibility for more of their individual complexity, for more of their unpredictability, or at least trying to harness some of that complexity for your purposes. And it raises a more general point, which is that any time we have a product and service or a service where effectively the value proposition of that product or service is always biting off complexity in some way, some sort of complexity that the customer is engaging with on behalf of the customer. And so even really mundane stuff like a toothbrush is kind of biting off the complexity or taking responsibility for the complexity of oral health. It's complex shit that goes on in there. You know? Toothpaste is really managing that complexity. Toothbrush is more managing the mechanics of it, I suppose. So
Toaster is the other one. We've been quoting the toaster thing.
So a toaster is managing the complexity of a heating element on your behalf, so you don't have to do it. Try building a toaster for yourself. Someone tried at the Royal Society a few years ago and discovered they couldn't do it. It's not an easy thing to do. So, but you don't need to worry about that complexity because someone has taken responsibility for that and crystallized it, to use Cesar Hidalgo's term.
I was going to say, Why Information Grows. Great book, Why Information Grows by Cesar Hidalgo, very serious.
Yeah.
Yeah, and so then if we look at everything from the perspective, am I going on too long?
No.
Everyone's here because it's fine. But they were listening to a copy of me. I wasn't even talking. I think people have got appetite.
He's doing it for free.
So when you think of this in terms of complexity, and the way I've been thinking about it is, what does what do large language models and agents and AI kind of offer for a business? They allow it to bite off more and different kinds of complexity than they ever could bite off before. I mean, the thing you were showing there is really about the complexity of a social network.
Absolutely.
Is overwhelming for a marketing team.
Yes.
Now that complexity can be managed and taken responsibility for.
We were talking about scenario modeling, and I was just saying that the reason I know all this stuff is basically scenario modeling. Like I did econometric modeling for Australian governments, right, where we're talking about how we basically price things in markets and how we drive it. And we use things like Monte Carlo modeling. We use things like agent-based simulation. Why? Because the complexity of the problem is such that you had to be in government and advising governments to be able to bite that off, right? But the problem statement exists even in the smallest online retailer. You are facing as much, if not more, uncertainty in navigating that social network as that small little one-person online retailer as I am when I'm trying to model, even like a subsection of the Queensland population, right? But you don't have the capacity with the previous tooling to engage with that complexity, which is your point, right? So what this is doing is the complexity budget's changing. We've gone from, well, that's going to cost 1,000 complexity points, and so it's only going to be people with a research lab, and now it's become, you don't need a lab at all. It's a $40 subscription, and you can have that sort of power. And I think the other point you made was, what does that mean you will do? Well, a large organization, this is what you were about to say? Small?
Exactly.
Will a large organization become medium, or will it mean that it becomes an even bigger and more complicated thing with that extra capacity?
Well, I mean, just to cash that out, it's like if you've got a small organization, can now bite off the complexity of a medium-sized organization's problems. So there's certain problems that only a medium-sized organization can bite off for a customer. And suddenly the medium-sized organizations can bite off the complexity of problem of a large organization. As a large organization, you face a choice. Are you going to become a medium-sized organization, or are you going to bite off a bigger problem or a more complex problem? I've been thinking about this, and we were talking about the MIT report that came out about people not seeing value from AI and not getting it out of the experiments that they're doing. And
misquoted completely.
Misquoted. There's that, but there's also the fact that when you first bite off, the question is they may have access to more complex problems, but simply haven't bitten them off yet. And so there may be this complexity surplus or capacity surplus for addressing complexity, but no one knows what to point that at. And I think some of the shadow AI, like lots of people using ChatGPT or using different tools kind of as personally in their work, is giving them a cognitive surplus is what we normally talk about it as, but no one knows how to monetize that surplus yet. And so that's why we're not necessarily seeing the impact yet. But once they do, the question is who works out how to monetize that.
Exactly.
Right.
And being the eternal optimist, complexity is infinite.
Yeah.
So jobs out there and the future of jobs and all that sort of stuff is there's not going to be a problem. Jobs of the future and all that sort of stuff. So that's another part of all of this sort of stuff that comes out and is typical newspapers, clickbait, and everything about what's the future, AI, and everyone freaking out. But it's, you know, we as a group, all these individuals, people who, you know, come to these talks to find out more about it, are at the control point, which is really important. We'll talk a bit more about that one later. But should I click the next?
Yeah, go for it.
Yes.
Click the button. This was the whole idea here was that people talk about it. We were last as part of WERXFEST. A great video coming. Check it out. It was a great honour to get to sit down and talk with Rob Sutton, who has his name on the building at Sutton Tools. If you've gone into a Bunnings warehouse, you'll be familiar with what that family does. So people keep talking about industrial revolution. We're right to talk about that. That's because it talks about labor displacement, really. What we're talking about is labor adjustment, labor displacement in the face of major technological change. The Sutton family have done it. They've been doing it for like 120 years, and so they have literally gone through it. What I love about going there is that there's literally photos in the lobby of the thing that I talk about, what actually meant that electrical generators really made their dent was when people realized you could redesign the factory, right? Because the original factory design had this big drive shaft over the top, right? And you had your big, you know, steam engine driving that shaft, and all the machines had to basically belt off that. Now there's photos of that in the Sutton building because that's what the original factory was. Now they make CNC machines. Their new Zealand factory, it produces 6-axis CNC routers, right, which they then use to make stuff. So the modularity and the technology of the factory floor is completely different. That was the breakthrough, because the original response was, why would I just buy a slightly cooler motor? I already have the really expensive motor. The moment was that there's a new structure. Like and it's quite pragmatic. Like it's literally at the level of I can change the layout of a factory, and we're talking about like what's going to be these big labor market level changes. Those labor market level changes flow on from solving some really very nuts and bolts technical stuff, which comes back to your point I think about complexity. Is that you were having to sit there and manage how do I physically get kinetic energy through this building, right? Something like, don't worry about that. Kinetic energy appears anywhere you connect it to electricity.
Yeah, I was thinking about this today. I was thinking about that moment when electricity comes into that building, and where do you see it first? I was wondering what the parallel was to right now, and it's kind of like...
You were thinking about that today.
Yes, he was.
It really was.
This is why we've got him here. Did we say what you do? Did we actually properly introduce? I'm so sorry.
No, it's okay.
I didn't put it on the slide. I didn't put it on the slide. So
I run the agentic technology team and business coaching team inside pre-sales organisation here at Salesforce for Australia and New Zealand.
So he was doing his job.
I was doing my job. So I was like, so what I was thinking about is like, if you think of people using ChatGPT on the side or using Gemini, and no one being able to see what they're kind of like, they know it's making people more efficient, but they're not sure exactly how. It's a little bit like how electricity first came into that factory, which would have been lighting. It would have come in the lighting, and now suddenly you've just got more hours in the day because people don't need to go home at night. It's like, okay, what, you know, are we actually producing more stuff? Yeah, a little bit more, but you know, it's not having a huge impact on the way of working yet because they hadn't done, like you say, the shift in, I talk about shift in operating model, right? The shift in operating model that needs to come next. And you know, I think the interesting thing to keep in mind here is bureaucracy and the idea of bureaucracy and what comes after bureaucracy, because we've had 200 or 300 years, come on, history, right? Of bureaucratic models of organising humans. Categorize stuff and then put them in order and then process them in that kind of way. And the question is whether something needs to come after bureaucracy in order to make knowledge work something other than bureaucratic work. I think there are some interesting patterns. Like, for example, one area I'm really excited about is actually healthcare, because I think while administrative work inside healthcare is very bureaucratic, if you're a nurse on the ground, it's nothing like a bureaucracy down there.
No.
And that's part of the reason why I think traditional digital transformation has never worked in those contexts, is because it tries to turn it into a bureaucracy.
Point. Yeah,
whereas in fact what was going on was managing a different kind of complexity that could not be broken down.
It's really high knowledge density. Yeah.
Right, that's a good way of...
what you've just said as well. So for anyone who's been doing digital transformation, again, health is like, it's a notorious nightmare. There's a reason why all of our healthcare systems have big IT bungles. It's not because like we just keep hiring the bad people. It's really, really hard for this reason. And I think you've nailed it there, is that actually the complexity is still being handled by really clever, trained people. And we're not going to stop that.
And really adaptable and
Yeah.
situation-specific
Yeah.
kind of responses. You're constantly improvising. It's jazz, it's not classical.
Yeah, you're right, 100%.
Like down there. So
It's not a factory, and they keep trying to turn it into a factory, and that doesn't work,
Yeah.
right? You're exactly right. It comes to this same idea that there's an interplay between complexity and structure, and that we'll see new structures emerge as you deal with the complexity.
If we're still on bureaucracy, and if we come back to people in all of this stuff, right, and how businesses over time, like the fundamental success of a business is having the right people on the bus, A players and so forth, and making sure they're aligned to so forth. And if you don't, you have more process, more bureaucracy. A players don't like that, they leave. You get more B players, you get more layers, you get all of this stuff. And again, to the history of work and the crap we've created for ourselves. We're at a point with disruption and new structures and all this sort of stuff to kind of go, hang on a minute, we've actually got a hand in reshaping this stuff.
Yeah.
And having a point of view as well. Like, and taking that, because all of this stuff, this is all great, JC, but, but this levels up everybody to a certain ability, but then that good to great, that last 5%, that's where I think there's this incredible position we're in right now. People, companies, the country, the whole lot. So anyway, I don't know where I was going with that one.
No, you're
can I just build on that? Because I was talking to
Maybe the next
Kylie
slide.
at the
Is
back.
there
Hi, Kylie, designers forever.
Enter the Tesseract method. Shout out
Yes,
to Kylie.
up the back there. Woo!
Because I think, having come up as a designer, one of the core principles of design work is kind of going, no one's an idiot. They're working out how to deal with whatever situation they're in. So when you come across a workaround, find the rationality in the workaround, and then try and harness that rationality to create a better system.
What do you mean by rationality?
I just mean the intelligence in how their behaviour is. Because otherwise, you turn around interaction design came as a response to the inmates running the asylum. I think is the famous book about that kind of going when it was tempting for programmers to go, oh, these people are idiots. They're not using the system properly, which is a classic bureaucratic management response to people going, this system doesn't work for me. And so having empathy first in order to do it is the only way you get at the complexity that those people on the ground can see and are managing and handling and taking responsibility for. Responsibility is a word that keeps coming up for me. Taking responsibility for. And we should do that because we now maybe have more capacity to help them manage that complexity
100%.
in a non-bureaucratic way.
In a non-bureaucratic way. And that's actually this slide here, if you're wondering what this is about. So Dyson, I think, is an amazing example of a truly great designer and inventor of our time, and is famous for what he did was literally come up with a motor, an electric motor, capable of an RPM rate that was literal orders of magnitude beyond anything else that we had. But its torque is really low. So you get really, really high RPM, really low torque. And people are like, what are you going to do with that? That's why you now have Dyson vacuum cleaners. So it's a great example of building a product from the inside out, was that I've actually got this incredible capability. I'm going to find all the things. And then that's why you also then wind up with all the related. So we're also going to make a fan. We're also going to make these other things. So he's literally taking a capability and from first principles, redesigning toasters, redesigning things that are capable now with that capability. There's actually a farm that's making headlines that he's built in the middle of London, in a abandoned factory, that is growing fresh strawberries and making money, because what he was able to redesign was this, again, highly robotic, extremely lightweight, vertical farm system, because the price on a fresh strawberry in London is actually, it's really high because they've got to bring it in usually from across the channel or from
So
elsewhere.
is it more than truffles?
Yeah, they do. They like their strawberries. We said we weren't going to do the accents. We're trying to. We had this whole
can only
professional
do
thing.
English. That's the only one.
No, we can't. We're not allowed to. But I've forgotten where I was going with that again. This is how management meetings work. But that idea of like using new technology to take something where it's literally an old factory building, and now we have like a productive yield, and we've got agricultural experts going to work effectively in outlying London, right, farming strawberries. It's not like a show piece. It's actually economically viable. People would have just not believed you. And it's all of those places where like it's beyond just arbitrage. There's a lot of this initial stuff which is pure arbitrage. I can do something faster and sell it to the market before everyone wakes up. And that's a good thing to do, but we compete that away. That's why it's called arbitrage. It's not a sustainable advantage point. It's a pip in the market. Whereas when you do stuff like that, when you go from first principles, redesign a farm, redesign a factory, redesign a vacuum cleaner, you unlock massively sustainable competitive advantage. And I think that your complexity budget analogy is perfect for that. The bureaucracy bit, like between those two ideas, you've got most of the ingredients for a modern business.
Yeah, it's kind of interesting because in some ways the challenge, like he's got this capability. The challenge is finding all the use cases that are actually going to be the right use cases. The phrase that's been haunting me lately is agent organization fit.
Yes. Yeah, that's
the idea
good.
of kind of like you launch an agent, but you don't necessarily have agent organization fit yet.
Yeah.
So you need to get the right scope of the thing. It needs to have the right shape. It needs to fit in with the team, with the structures and the systems and the control processes that are already that make sense, or they need to adapt, or all that stuff needs to happen. And what's the fastest way to getting to agent org fit is the kind of outstanding question. And part of that fit, the point I wanted to make is safety in lots of senses, just not in the very grand scheme of values alignment that we often talk about when we talk about AI, but in the very local kind of sense of situational values alignment. Like, how do the nurses? What's the culture of those nurses in that ward, for example, and what sort of virtues do you need to have to be a good nurse in that ward, or what sort of virtues do you need to ensure you're reinforcing in that situation? All those kinds of things.
Yes.
And the reason why I bring that up is because that's the other reason why we resorted to bureaucracy, is because it makes us feel safer. Yeah. We know there's a process, and we know it's locked down, and it's deterministic, and we can audit it, and we have transparency, and all those things are really valuable from a safety perspective. So, and you could go, and I don't think it's appropriate. I don't think the right thing to do is just go, well, screw safety. We'll just run with it. It's not going to be sustainable. It's not going to last. You're going to end up damaging your reputation, the business, all those kinds of things. So the fastest way to agent org fit is probably to be really explicit about what safety actually means in this context, rather than just assuming safety means compliance with a rule or a locked down or kind of process or something like that. What would safety mean?
That's a really good one too, because when you talk about risk and governance, and I think in your article as well, you talk about financial services, right? And you can be really efficient, but you compromise all your principles and you're done overnight. But on the same token, if you nail that, it's a win theme. And for businesses to find out and map out some of these things that are like, we're really good at this sort of stuff, but that one and this disruptor that's coming, well, yeah, there's some negative, but holy cow, if we nail it like here and just get focused, and that's, I think, part of this, when I'm talking to a lot of different businesses, is about where do we start? There's so much you need to jump at, and I've got boards saying, what's our AI strategy? And everybody's going, I want to play with all this tooling, but then also you're like, yeah, we want to get it into the hands, and a lot of the stuff in the previous talk was about get started, right? Yeah. But within your safety parameters, behind the Salesforce trust wall.
Yes, indeed.
Sorry, that was my plug for the day.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Making sure you get your KPIs, man.
Yeah. You do. We might, just thinking, if we move forward a little bit, we've got a couple.
Oh, sorry.
No, it's all right. We've already covered it, but we touched on this one, that whole idea of the bureaucracy interacting with A teams as well. You haven't seen that one yet? That's pretty. Everyone loves that one. That one's yes. And okay, it's a good segue. Of course, it's all AI generated, right? given you saw how I arrived for the keynote, right? So when do you reckon I started making these slides before the first time we gave this presentation in Brisbane? What do you reckon? Yeah, it wasn't quite that bad. You can tell this guy has to put up with my crap on a regular basis. But the whole thing was done in about 90 minutes because what I have now is a pipeline. And one of the things as well, guys, is after the presentation, I'm going to be over there. You're very welcome to come and we can play with artificial societies. I can show you any of the workflows. But one of the things that I've really gone deep in is this emerging workflow around creative. I don't even like using that word, but effectively generative AI for creating images, videos, right? And doing that as a scale pipeline. And what that looks like, guess what? It looks like the data pipelines I've been building for 20 years. It's just that in the pipe, it now generates ideas. Once you see it at scale, then you really understand, okay, we actually had 40 of these to pick from that had very specific themes. And one thing you'll notice, if you haven't already, do you see the little palm trees? There's little palm trees and it's sunset,
and the colors,
right? That's because that's the theme of the WERXFEST event, and it's been permeated into the context window early. It's not being attached constantly. It's actually early in the pipe, and it swirls through the pipe as important summary context, and it pops up as a result in all of the videos. And that's an example. The reason I mention it is it's an example of what this is trying to say. So, like, I'm one guy doing this because it was fun, and it's turned into like there's a YouTube channel about it, and that idea of what this can now mean you do if you've got someone. I mean, for me, it's a hobby, but that's been enough. That for small A teams, it usually is a passion thing. So if you get someone passionate, you want to remove the red tape. There's no reason not to. You're going to want to remove some of the bureaucracy in order to unleash that individual. And I think this is where your Jim Collins comes in about. Is quite damning of bureaucracy in the context of high-performance teams, right?
Yeah, absolutely. And so all those timeless principles, if you haven't read his stuff, good to great, this book is phenomenal. I've talked to Tom afterwards too. He's our coach as well as, experienced in the sense of the stuff that is still so relevant now about having the right people. It's about what is your one thing, what is the stuff, the strategy that makes you different. Because again, we talk on one of the sessions about what you can produce yourself. Like you were doing some music stuff and some art stuff. But personally, I want to plug my old guitar into an old amplifier.
You will later.
Yeah, well, yeah. But in the sense of like that's kind of real, and then to see people on stage really performing, that's never going to go away from me. Nope. And I think obviously that is true for many people across all sorts of different industries. But that's kind of where your personal touch, your personality, the way that you create a culture in business, the brand, everything that you've pulled together that is that next little bit that shapes what the future looks like. And it's happening now. It's pretty exciting.
Yeah, you were talking when we spoke about
we were comparing guitars, weren't we?
We were comparing guitars, but you won. But but about how the limitations of a brand that purports to just be a mirror of the customer.
Yeah.
Can you say more about that?
So that one of like going, okay, you're talking to something and it's repeating back to you and it's all perfect and all that sort of stuff, but it's not really giving you a personalized service like that a human can kind of interject or so forth, which is, it'll get really good. But I think folks are going to want more than that, right? There's the meat and potato stuff of, renewing something and being on, which I was on, an airline call for ages, which it was pretty straightforward stuff that we need to do. Hopefully that all changes and gets better and stuff. But then there's another point to where, hang on, I really need that other, I feel like I'm just like a whole segment instead of that personation we talked about before.
Why would I buy your mirror? Was the thing we were saying the other day. Why would I buy your mirror? If all you do is mirror me back and say that's personalization, I'm like, cool, but I already knew that. I'm better at being me than you are. So there has to be something that comes back, no matter how personalized, that is effectively an opinion, that is the thing that I want to engage with, is the brand or the product that I want to buy.
Yeah, it's really hard to get a handle on, because I mean, when we were talking as well, we were talking about the the difference between seeing live music and seeing a YouTube video of live music, and the difference about the only way I can kind of articulate the difference is, or seeing a musical, right? Like if anyone's gone to see Hamilton, right, in City, you know, and you're like, they're right there. It could go wrong.
Yeah.
Like, but once you're watching the video, it's too late for it to go wrong. Like, there's no. Yeah. And so I was like going, is it the vulnerability that's actually the important thing? Is it the fact that it could all go to shit?
Yeah.
Like, and that something could go pear-shaped? And I was, what it reminded me of is that marketing term from like 10, 15 years ago of having a flawsome brand, of a brand that was kind of flawed enough. You know, I wonder about these kind of whether the moments of recovery are going to be more important than the moments of delivery. You know, I'm kind of going, yeah, no, it's, you know, and actually...
It will be immediately seen as authentic. Right?
Yeah, that's right.
Yep.
Which...
So you want to build flaws back into AI now?
Yeah, more flawed AI. Well,
yeah, I mean, well, actually, in some ways, you know, like if you look at what OpenAI has just done with GPT-5 and lowering the sycophancy, that's another way of creating tension or resistance in a certain way. And like earlier we saw it with educators trying to use LLMs and going, this is useless for us. We can't teach anyone anything if you don't mean giving them the answer. If you mean building their resilience. And so I wonder whether people will expect more of brands to be kind of like, it's not just about serving my need anymore, it's about being a partner in my evolution. And that requires some sort of resistance and maybe some sort of setting me up for some sort of struggle, because without struggle, there's no growth. Or something like that.
Yeah. Comfort and growth don't coexist.
That sounds like another Jim Collins.
Well, no, it was actually it was up on the wall and he was doing a spin class a while ago. But yeah,
that's great.
But it's true though, because you got to, you know, you're going through that bit of pain and you grow out of it.
It doesn't need to be epic struggle. Like I don't want to, you know, advocate for that. That gets a bit, I don't know, ideological. But grit. Some little bit of grit to make the oyster maybe is a metaphor.
100%. Yeah. You actually mentioned, we'll skip over this slide quickly, but you mentioned this earlier about...
what do you want me to do?
Pardon? No, it's all right. It's good. But what we're talking about, actually skip over these three. We've literally just gone, so there's something around
Don't say that says full pacological profile, which is excellent.
Yeah, I know. It didn't even get the words right? No,
but I like the idea of pacological. I think that's the definition of marketing, isn't it? Pacological.
What's this?
And I didn't tell it to make me the DJ. I did not tell it to do that.
Did not approve this.
But again, look at the theme, right? So literally it turned the palm tree into the poster. Because it's a nighttime setting, so you wouldn't see the palm tree, but it made the palm tree appear on the poster. So, and that idea of opinion is competitive advantage. So those three slides, we kind of talked about it, you know, because what we literally did was we hung out for like a weekend, talked crap, fed it into GPT, said turn that into like a keynote, that'll be fun. And then tried to make some PowerPoint slides that would loosely go with it. And it's gone exactly the way we thought it would. It's like, well, let's talk about the things, forget about the slides. But we had slides in there about maintaining the maintenance. No, it's quite all right. I've done the same thing too. We've already done, anyway, it's fine. The point is that we have an opinion, see? That's an opinion is competitive advantage.
Well, we'll let them make the judgment.
We'll make them make the judgment. So the first thing was like, you commented on, holy crap, I now have to be aware of how my persona is going into things like artificial societies, how it could go into like JC's clone thing, and how exhausting that is. And part of, again, like I won't do it here, but happy to show people afterwards, like in Silicon Valley, we talk about leverage, right? We've always talked about leverage. It's the word that doesn't get used enough. It's the big thing we've been saying in each of these presentations at the end when people say, so what do I do with this tech? Like me personally, right? Leverage is really what the SaaS game is all about. It's what Silicon Valley is all about. It's about creating this massive scalar effect over what an individual can do. And they talk about things like the 10x developer in the Valley, right? Now they're talking about the 100x developer, the 1000x developer. It's now just the 100x you, right? And that is the game. The difference with this particular revolution is traditionally leverage has been achieved with capital, right? This now does not require capital. You literally have access to GPT-5 right now basically for free. And you can use it to teach you anything you want. To your point about teaching, like don't ask it the answer, ask it to coach you and you will have an incredible experience. We were talking to Jenna, I think, is here. Yeah, thank you. You took our advice on this and was like, I've always wanted to know more about classical art eras. Well done, by the way. Like, talk about a refined thing to go learn. But again, the whole process of not asking it questions, but asking it to teach completely changes things. Why? Because this is not an information retrieval tool. It is a multimodal framework for navigating knowledge, right? If you feed it, it's also, by the way, a function. It is literally a function. It's fx. And where the x is the LLM does some extra stuff. But whatever you put in, stuff happens and stuff comes out, right? So you've got to guide it. If you don't have a view of what's going in, yeah, what comes out will be kind of garbage, which is also why people have had such a change.
Jump in on that.
Yeah.
Because I think, even when you showed me your pipeline,
Yeah.
creating your for taking your notes that are your notes.
Yeah.
And that
The
actually
writer.
the really interesting thing about what he showed me was actually it was the chain of custody that you developed from your thoughts
Yep.
to the output that meant that you could ensure that there was authenticity in the output. And I thought that was like this, it was a great example of you're not trying to design the output, you're trying to design the system that ensures that the output reflects a certain set of values that you have about what the output should be. In that case, it's about authenticity, and it's about it not taking any information from anywhere apart from the things that you've given it, and it's allowed to rewrite it. And so I've been trying to do this myself. It's very hard, but it's very easy to slide into what they call AI slop, right? Like,
it is.
But maybe it's a good example of knowing that there's the risk of AI slop. Provokes the kind of safety practices, which is another way of describing what you're doing. You're trying to build a ring fence.
You've just said something.
Safety practice.
You're so far ahead of the curve.
Around ensuring to avoiding inauthenticity as being the.
So why didn't you say the word hallucination? Why didn't you say the word hallucination? You know why? Because we weren't talking about stupid, boring business crap. Right?
Yeah.
So when we're talking about business crap, we say hallucination. Jan LeCun has said, I wish I'd never coined that term, right? When we're over here in creativity, like it hallucinated JC Calling, it hallucinated the palm tree, it hallucinated. Of course it's hallucination, for God's sakes. The creative process has been one of hallucination for like millennia. The exact same thing which is seen as a weakness of these incredible events over here in business land is suddenly this huge opportunity over here in creativity. But what you then have is a different type of guardrail. What you're worried about in the writing, because I feel about writing the way you feel about music, right? Is that what you have in the writing is the fear.
Exactly right.
The hallucination in writing is that it stops sounding like me. Everyone looking on LinkedIn is like, oh, there's M dashes. Oh, it's not this, it's Y. It's a revolutionary. You've hit on something really profound. And you see these phrases and you know it's come from an LLM. But it's not a hallucination, and you don't look at it and go, oh, it's broken out of a guardrail. You say it's no longer authentic. So the failure condition in the creative expressive space is not it suddenly talks garbage during a business process. It's I know that wasn't you.
That's really, just out of like, because I keep going, the thing musically, there was someone in, what's his damn name? Fantastic philosopher who when ChatGPT first came out, he said, oh, it's a synthesizer for text. And I was like, oh, it's a synthesizer, like a keyboard synthesizer. I'm like, oh, of course it is, but it's more like the whole studio. Brian Eno is famous for kind of going, you can play a studio. You play a studio like you play an instrument. If you master it, exactly. I've forgotten his name, the producer, George Martin, right? Where was I going?
Synthesizer.
You can play, the idea of a studio and being able to play it, and like actually, you think of Rick Rubin. Are you guys familiar with Rick Rubin, the famous producer? He produced the Beastie Boys. He produced all these bands throughout the 90s and 90s and still today. He doesn't play an instrument. I've just realized what he's great at. What he's great at is avoiding musical slop. Like that's his whole job, is to go, hey, I can take a band and I can trim away the musical slop until all you've got left is gold. And then it goes and becomes this great thing, which is like, we can understand that and go, that's hard. And it looks nothing like playing an instrument well,
100%.
But not everyone can do it, and we know the difference in the output when we see it.
So that comes back to the session we had earlier, and where everybody a takeaway for what they can do right now and how they use it in a safe environment. is that thought partner, right? And to kind of go, because Brian Eno, who did Coldplay and U2 and all the rest of it, he was able to say to you, you are drumming too busy, and you are doing this. Because if you guys say it to each other, you go, what do you know about drumming? You know, I'm not going to listen to you. But it was like this third party that was able to pull that together, get rid of the slop, produce amazing.
Well, that's the human's role, right?
I'm going to stop you because I thought you were lining something up, and you actually don't know. So there's a book that Anthropic, the guys who made Claude, released only about 2 months ago, and it's called The Tao of Vibe Coding. Who do you think wrote it? It's Rick Rubin.
Right, I forgot.
Rick Rubin just wrote a book on vibe coding. The guy you're talking about.
It's pretty pretentious, though. I did have a.
It is really pretentious. Park that. It's
like I wouldn't kind of recommend it.
Does it go to Anthony Kiedis on the front or something? No.
We're going to have this intersection. When I have the guys in creative industries, like when we talk about it, I go, listen, if you do it as an industry, like I totally get this, but the reality is, if you have been able to do creativity as a job, you know that an enormous amount of what you do, it's a job. It's not a work of, you know, Mona Lisa level art. It's a job, and we've been using AI to do it for decades. That's the truth. Everything you've been doing in Photoshop, it's been AI. It just hasn't been generative LLMs and all this other stuff. There's an ethical component about how they're trained, and I am so on board. Like, there is no reason we cannot have fairly trained models. Check out fairlytrained.org is literally a group trying to do this, to say models could be trained by correctly licensing the input. But to say that we're not going to have it play a role in creative expression, it would be the first time technologically we don't. Every single time we do it, we wind up, you know, incorporating it. But what we're saying is, the difference between the slop and something which is then compelling is you literally injected into the context your opinion, and it pays attention to that, and it crafts around it.
Yeah, and in any domain, and this is making the transition, if in any domain there is a standard of excellence that's in there, but that standard of excellence is agnostic about how you achieve it. But if you don't understand the standard of excellence in that domain, you can't put AI in there to achieve it. You need to have people who understand that standard of excellence. And that's where I think, you know, like you go, when we talk about values alignment, for example, you need to think of that at a team level. You need to think of it as like, this group of people has a standard of excellence that they're working to, and that standard of excellence includes excellence in all sorts of senses, not just the output, but how they relate to other groups, how they organize themselves and allocate work, how they cultivate talent, how they develop professionally. All those kinds of things can be, if you're not having a conversation about what excellence looks like in your context, you can't have a good conversation about how AI enhances your ability to achieve that excellence. But what's even better about that is that level of abstraction of talking about what excellence means gives you enough freedom to go, oh, you know what, maybe AI is perfect for actually solving this part of this aspect of excellence, which we really struggle to live up to.
Exactly.
The aspects of excellence that we struggle to embody. Well, yeah, let's have AI as the scaffolding, as the advisor, or as the taking the load off from somewhere else, so we can focus on that thing. There's lots of
automation in code development.
Yes, exactly.
Right? Is a perfect example.
We know that's
excellent. We also know it's really hard.
Excellence, but we know we don't have time for it.
Yep, 100%. And sorry.
Yes, I was just wondering about time because we're going to.
Yeah, pretty much to wrap it is that there's a thing.
Irreducible qualities.
There's a thing that we've all been talking about here, about this idea of something unique. And what I did want to just introduce to people is that the maths about how these things work is still a really exciting space. If all the models stopped now, we would have 10 years of serious R&D just to understand what we already have. It is remarkable, and this is also why just. Anybody telling you it's slowing down, I'm like, just find out what they're short and long on, because they are talking up their book. I don't know what universe they're walking in, but it ain't mine. This thing ain't slowing down. This thing's just not playing the game we all think it is. Like, what did you expect ChatGPT to upgrade into? Like the Jetsons? It's ChatGPT. Like, it's already doing miracle work. What we should be asking about is like, what the hell are all the other models now doing that we're not putting into ChatGPT? And I can tell you, because I do my best to try and keep up with some of them. It's all going to a different place now, but it's not slowing down. It's actually getting big time. And that's why this idea is really important. Mathematically, there's an argument to think that some of what they are doing, when you actually look inside an LLM, when you look inside these really big models, What's incredible is how much of it is basically constantly photocopying the same stuff, if I could use that analogy. It's lots and lots of panels of basically everything I saw multiplied by everything I saw. Everything I saw multiplied by everything I saw. But there's this little diagonal particularly in the attention windows, in the attention mechanism. And sometimes they call it frosting, which is a beautiful word. It's tiny, 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 tiny little perturbations in what's otherwise perfectly equal. It's like grains in a filter of a camera. These appear to be things that are irreducible. Irreducibility in mathematics and complex systems is really, really interesting. It's the idea that we've reached a point where there's no way to hack that or simplify that mathematically any further. We've got to do the work. It also applies in chaos theory. It's where we say things like Langton's ant I'm always talking about. It's a simple little program that's incredibly hard to predict. You have to basically sit there and let it do its little thing to see everything that comes out of it, right? So there's nothing random about chaos as we observe it in the world. It's actually entirely deterministic. It's just very, very complicated, like a double pendulum. It has a quality of irreducibility. You can't get around it. You have to live it. You have to move the pendulum. So what's interesting is that there's a clear analogy in that what people find authentic and most spooky about things like the JC bit is when we start to do things like, how do I prove it's the real you? You start asking these things that are more and more uniquely JC. The more and more uniquely JC it is, the more it's an example of computational irreducibility. It's something where you weren't able to broadly interpolate it or graph it. You had to find JC. Now, once I'm in the training data, that changes things a bit. It's potentially going to learn about that irreducible quality. But here's the great thing about us as humans. Everything that it's being trained on that's irreducible is either stuff that was in the physical world that it's trained on now, or it's stuff we made. And we keep making it, right? So that there's actually this whole renewable process. In the middle of everyone being worried about the slop, I'm like, what it's really doing is it's just forcing you to realize, did you have an opinion? Did you have a competitive advantage? Because the era of getting away with that not being true, this is going to be the great equalizer. But what's incredible is if you do, these things gravitate to it. The moment you have something that's irreducible, that we can't just predict or forecast, that's completely and totally unique, whether it's the way you play your guitar, the music you like, the way you painted the picture, right? You have something really, really powerful. And even if you only have it for a period of time, this thing that we're worried about, they're going to train on my data. Yeah, they are. Yeah, the whole thing's been training on stuff. This whole socio-technical network, we've been writing stuff down for thousands of years. It's all been this process of capturing what's unique and trying to codify it and store it. Guess what? We come up with new stuff. The key is that if you don't double down on the unique, the new, the irreducible, then it's hard to see how you navigate. But I think that's the opportunity, like you talk about, as Aussies. Right? Yep. Australians have a point of view. We have a way of doing things. Yeah. That's potentially valuable.
What Justin and I were talking about before, and to wrap this all up and towards some questions and stuff about, is do we want to just, be guided by what happens around in other countries and way they're regulating, which we, if we don't embrace it and don't sort of, get on the front foot, it's just like, in Australia, as far as we were talking about before, around strategy and being on the, visionary side of that, it happens here and there. Scrappy, not crappy, is what you said, right? It was beautiful.
Yeah,
some incredible businesses and folks and whatever comes out of this place, and that where we have this awesome opportunity right now to shape that.
Yeah, I think that's right. I mean, just combining those two ideas together, in some ways, we can tend to think of our relationship to the rest of the world as like we're either ahead or behind, which is another way of thinking of the whole thing as linear, right? There's only one path. It's just, are we ahead or are we behind? It's more interesting to go, what's going to be weird and different about doing this kind of thing here? More about here. What makes here? And just I think moving into this tower and being able to see down over the harbour and for the first time you can almost see through the built environment here and see, and I like to think of it whenever we do an acknowledgement of country, I mention this because it's like such a privileged position because you can see country. Like you kind of get a sense of like, oh, that's kind of like getting a little bit of a sense of what country means, how the complexity all around us and the uniqueness of that complexity could speak in a certain way. And we should listen, and that means listening really carefully to each other and to what we're doing and what's happening here, because here-ness is kind of the only thing that we'll have left that's really a competitive advantage. It'll be worthwhile doing it here. What makes it worthwhile? What makes it worth being here? What is here for us? And I think that's the, and it goes back to the seeing someone on stage or watching a musical in the flesh, because they're here and now. Like, what's here and now?
Yeah.
Like, where are we and what time is it? Are like the two best questions to start before deciding what should we do. You have to answer those two questions first. And so we should be asking them as kind of like, Australia is like a big place, and maybe it doesn't need to be Australia, but where you are in your community or in your industry or your sector, but here, not just in abstract, that industry, anywhere, but right here. I don't know, that's the thing I want to leave people with. Is like,
Yeah, that's powerful. Thanks, Justin.
thanks, Toby.
That was super. And JC, of course.
Oh.
Gosh, we could go deep.
both.
We're going to open up to questions. Anyone got any they want to fire off? You don't have to. You can go straight for drinks. Or go and hang out with JC on some of the demo stuff. But was there...
Tom's got
Tom's
a
got a
question.
question. He's just
You
bursting.
see it in his eyes. Go, mate.
No?
You guys blew my mind, but it had me thinking about how to use the term custody and how can we take custody of our culture. Where you were going, how you make I don't know, just
Oh, yeah.
thinking about how do we help.
At the service of your culture rather than something that, it'll have to change in some way, but, having control of that, or being deliberate about that change rather than just letting it happen. Is that
It
what?
wasn't a question, more just an observation.
No, it's good. Yeah.
It took me on a few rounds.
Yeah.
The maintenance of the self, right, which is even as a statement is kind of insane to say, but that's where we are now, folks, right? The maintenance of the self is going to be basically what anyone creating content is grappling with, and that point about like how I write. I literally, my retirement plan is I just want to write. I love writing. There we go. I haven't shared that in the public.
I hate writing, but I feel like I really
I
should
love
write.
writing.
So
I've got a fountain
That's what I
pen.
want to do.
My-
I don't want to make AI slop, but I really want someone to do that work for me.
My handwriting's terrible, but my touch grass is I still have a beautiful Japanese green ink fountain pen and imported Italian paper. Like I love it. I
Just take photos of that
and just take photos of that, upload it to the AI. Yeah, exactly. No, because the maintenance of the self in writing, it's not just about the tone. Like when you talk about the brands, they're already trying to make sure that the AI writing for the brand has the brand voice, right? But it's so much deeper than that if you're trying to write. Like we were talking about, the whole pipeline that I had to build was I have rules about different levels of editing. So there's editing agents that will literally just do the raw correction. And I go, you're not allowed to actually change the syntax. You're literally just finding transcription errors, right? Yeah, and then there's a whole other step where before you get to be my editor, you have to understand like the entity map and the knowledge graphs, and then there's all the tone. Now, if I'm doing all of that just to try and leverage my authenticity, what are we going to do with culture? How are we going to do that inside an organization? Organizations have a crisis of the last 30 years where we've got obsessed with this thing about culture. We don't know how to do it. We don't know how to maintain it. And we think it is just about the thing on the wall, and it's not. It's not about the thing on the wall. It's about whether or not you live the thing on the wall, right? And the other quote I love, culture is what happens when you're not in the room. It's absolutely correct, right? Like, so the fact that we're letting these things into our room. The agents don't work like computer programs. They work like users. They work like people.
Yes.
And if they're walking around 24/7 talking to our people, right, they could be closer to the culture than I am as a leader in the culture, right? So the idea that we're...
Cultural chaos.
They could be cultural chaos, right? Yeah, totally. Which is why, like, something we didn't touch on here, but you touched on upstairs, right? This dude has an agent.
Yeah.
Wolfgang, right? And you were one of the first, you're an actual AI-driven leader.
This is Wolfgang. Yeah, I call him Wolfie for short.
So in many ways, Wolfgang is infusing culture because you use Wolfgang to help you ideate and strategize, right?
And like me as a person, if a filter of I like this book and that book, and this is the way I believe we should run this business and all of that.
That's the key.
Yeah. But by the way, Jenna, Wolfie is not going to fill out the Culture Amp survey anytime soon.
But the first thing you did with Wolfie when we were making him, the first thing you did was go, these authors, and it was like, no, it's these three, and it's these books by those authors, and it's these quotes, right? Now, what's really important is that Wolfgang has in his RAG architecture, he has stuff which is ancillary knowledge. So we have not loaded up your template for a board report or a communication memo. What we've loaded up are important quotes, values, ideas, right? And all of that is coming in. When you then ask Wolfie, hey, help me think about what I need to do next week with X, Y, and Z, you're infusing it.
Exactly. Like there's a couple of books, when we first kicked off CloudWorks, Radical Candor by Fiona Scott, I think it is, who, you know.
And Fierce Conversations, I believe, as well.
This stuff. And she draws out the quadrant of where, you know, good is and where not so great is. And we all bob around all of these every day where, you know, I'm sort of saying, yeah, that's fine, but it's not really fine, but I don't want to hurt your feelings. You know? Ruinous empathy, it's called, right?
Yeah.
And having that as a kind of reminder, I look back at that book and all that sort of stuff to kind of go, to try and better what I do and forget, because you forget, you get caught up in emotions and all of that sort of stuff. So in a way, Wolfgang is kind of reminding me, you know, by the way, when you're talking about this stuff, that's like the flywheel that Jim Collins, you know, was talking about, right? And that's the or Tesseract, our methodology about what is the business that's going to put CloudWorks out of business. Right? So ask questions like that, and you get a kind of like a nice little shock to the system, and you go, oh, hang on, that's a win theme. That's something that we're already in front of, and we're doing, and blah, 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 right? And every business can do that, and they should be doing it now.
Absolutely. And every individual can be doing that. And if we get individuals doing it, they permeate through the business space.
And we rubber band it into talking ourselves rather than listening to these guys. So
yes. Questions, more questions.
I mean, is anyone doing something like this at the moment themselves? Like anyone playing around in this way?
New hands?
Anyone confronted anything that made them go, you know,
we know Jenna was using it to do art studies. Is anyone else using ChatGPT or something like it to do something that they want to share? It's a real question. How do you use ChatGPT or Claude?
It's a loofah.
It's a safe space.
A bit here.
Come on, there's got to be someone. One person, otherwise, then we'll let you go and you can have. There we go. Thank you. Thank you for being the victim. I mean, volunteer.
Do you say poker?
Yeah. Look at these
okay,
two
that
set
came
up.
out.
Now you're talking my language.
All right.
Can we get a micro? How do we? Yeah.
Right.
Smile.
You got to tell everybody. You're getting straight tips now.
So there's a tool called GTO Wizard, which is basically allows you to see the best possible way to play every single hand.
Yeah.
And I use ChatGPT as my poker coach instead, because GTO Wizard costs $1,600 USD a year.
Yep.
So I actually use it to run simulations with myself to see what the best way I could have played a hand would be.
We have to talk afterwards. But I've got to ask. Yeah. Are you just using it to crunch odds on, or do you also talk through bet strat with
full theory?
Yeah. See, that's the key. Is that mathematically there's limits to how well it can crunch extreme odds and be sure of it, unless it has like a calculated tool. But the thing the calculator can't do is it can't then seamlessly talk through the bet strat as you're moving around. I use it for the same thing. Like it's fantastic at this.
The other thing that I can actually input as well that GTO Wizard can't do is because I was at the table, I know who the players were, I know how they were playing, what their betting frequency was and things like that, and just any patterns. So I can input that as well and get additional information too, which is pretty cool.
Yeah, and I think it's interesting because I try to play chess and I never get better. So I like think of it as it's my exercise in humility on a daily basis. I just lose, and then I lose, and I lose. It's humbling.
That's just.
But the interesting thing is like going through the game reviews at the end of a game, if you're chess.com, it doesn't help me at all, because it's basically just an expert. It's like, okay, you're an expert, I'm not. You're not making me an expert. You're just showing me what an expert would have done and what I would have done if I were an expert. That's not the same as getting better. Whereas the difference between having it's interesting because it's having expert opinion thrown at you versus having something that provides scaffolding for your thinking are two very different postures, I think, in this stuff, and choosing the right posture is critical. Like sometimes you just need an expert to tell you what's what, and sometimes you need a partner in thinking or something like that. Anyway, that was my...
You just won, by the way, for like 2 weeks of us doing this. That was the best example ever. Round of applause. Thank you for sharing. There you go.
An extra tote bag.
Yeah, you do. You get an extra tote bag. 2 tote bags. Okay. They're going to kick us out of here.
You're going to keep us moving because...
I'm just trying to be a good host, so I'm running around with my...
Yeah. Any other questions? I think we've got... Just wanted to flip over to the other deck.
Yeah.
Or the other slide. Oh.
So can we switch back to... Thank you.
Yeah. And I just wanted... Ali, do you want to come up? You got the microphone here. Just say a few words. WERXFEST is underpinned by Dee and our CMO, Danielle, so yeah, I'll hand it to you.
I think it was a really lovely segue towards the end of that talk. We talked about culture, we talked about values. My favourite value at CloudWorks is to be a force for good. To be a force for good for me and to live a life with purpose. We have an important family member, CloudWorks family member, that's not with us tonight, and that's our Chief Marketing Officer, Dee. Dee last year was diagnosed with pancreatic cancer. It was a shock to all of us, and she's actually quite lucky. She's now on a trial, one of the lucky ones, that gets to prolong her life. She's also being a force for good, and for the rest of her life, she's raising funds so family members don't need to go through what she's going through with her family right now. I'd like to pause there because we have a lot of CloudWorks family members who are standing beside Dee, and I'd like them to all stand now, or the ones who are walking for Dee in Remember September. Toby?
Yeah, absolutely. We've got a few across the team.
So this is a shameless plug. And you can support in many ways. You can support by donating on our CloudWorks page. You can support by sharing our story in LinkedIn and getting other people to support. Or you could actually join up Pankind, Remember September, and actually raise money for this amazing, amazing charity. Yep. Why 75K? In Australia, 75 people die each week of pancreatic cancer. And that's why we're walking 75Ks in September. Yeah. So thank you. If you have the opportunity, please support us.
Awesome. Thanks, Ali. So, yeah, every little bit counts. We're going to keep, and Dee's keeping tabs with WERXFEST. It was really, we kicked this off with just a party, to celebrate, we're so many years old. And then she's like, hang on a minute. This could be like South by Southwest and Coachella, and I said Burning Man, and she said no. And here we are in the third year, and we took it on the road, went around the country. Like I felt like it was a big day out. It was mixed, but it was good. It was positive, and it's going to keep going every year. We get bigger and bigger and better, and we've got all these other threads going on too, which is the engine room where CloudWorks. Staff are talking about different things we're doing internally and sharing knowledge and all that sort of stuff. And so there's the engine room, and then there's a partner network, and we've got incredible sponsors. Where are you, Celine? Right there. Certinia, which is what we run our business on, and of course Heaps Normal, my mate Andy Miller, which I'm sure this will boost sales like Robbie Williams' new investment into Heaps Normal. Salesforce, of course. Thanks for spending your time and for their support with WERXFEST every year. It's fantastic. And we want to just, not always just talk about tech and business, but just talk about what's going on in the market and so forth. But we're more than happy to talk about business and how we can help everybody. There's see the red shirts if you need to, find out more about, obviously Salesforce and CloudWorks. But thank you so much for coming down tonight. You've enjoyed the view. We've got some drinks, a bit of music from the band Works For Me. They'll be up. I'm supporting them, by the way. I'll just do a couple of tracks, but they're really the
Stick around for that.
Julian and the gang will play a couple of great tunes, and we'll see you next time. Thank you very much.